I woke to the sound of explosions. There was a steady, continuous bombardment in the distance. And though I had heard rockets and bombs from Gaza for more than a decade, during every round of fighting, this was of an order of magnitude larger than anything I have ever heard before. My wife woke as well and asked, "What's going on?" I answered with one word, even though to this day I don't know how I knew so quickly: war. From that moment, on the morning of October 7th, Simchat Torah, I, and most of the rest of Israel, raced to get a handle on this brave new reality. We immediately began trying to figure out what had changed. But here's the kicker. Hamas on October 7th was the same Hamas of October 6th. The only difference is that they brought forward to the light of day the plans they had for more than a year, or longer. It's not that reality so much had changed, but rather that we had been stripped away from the illusion that we held before. I had experienced that feeling one time before in my life, when I was a 14-year-old in America early on that day in September. It's a moment when you realize that it's not the physical reality of the world that has changed, but that you had been blind to the reality that was real all along. But of course, that realization dramatically brings about real change. It changes the country, it changes what people are thinking about, it changes what they are doing, it changes how they are reacting, it changes how they choose to act. It changes all of us, deep to the core. Welcome to Causality, where we look at the cause behind world events. The news reports the symptoms, we provide the diagnosis. My name is Sharon Bar Eretz. I'm a major in the IDF reserves. I have a background in international relations, political science, and sociology, and as always, this is my own analysis. It is in no way official, and I am sure many people will have differences of opinion. This isn't the whole truth, but I believe it is part of the truth. This video is the last part of our series, Prelude to October 7th, which itself is the first series in a larger anthology, deconstructing the multi-front war Israel has been fighting since October 7th. On that day, there was a deep intelligence failure. There was a catastrophic failure of our defenses. All of this is true, but they both stem, I believe, from a far deeper failure. That failure is called in Israel HaKonseptsia, the conception, or perhaps the misconception. This was the prevailing dogma that led our leaders, the army, the nation, to dismiss Hamas. We thought they had too much to lose. They were this small terrorist group that had somehow been able to take care of Gaza and its infrastructure. They collected the taxes, they managed the salaries, they had this big shadow government. We assumed that they would prioritize that self-preservation, that wealth, those livelihoods, that power over a fanatical, irrational ideology, even though they had written it out for everyone to see. We had assumed that since Hamas had taken on the airs of a state, it would function like a rational state actor. We assumed that they were deterred, but this assumption didn't come out of nowhere. This wasn't an accident. This was a carefully crafted perception that Hamas put forward, banking that we would want to believe it, that we would want to believe that this was an address through which stability could be achieved, that we didn't have to go into Gaza, that we didn't have to go to war, that we didn't have to spend our blood and our treasure. They would rein in smaller groups like Islamic Jihad. We would say that we would hold them responsible if Islamic Jihad would carry out an attack, as if they weren't themselves planning on throwing it all away for their own ideological reasons. And they would put on a stern face and would say, "Oh, us? No, we're not part of it." All of this was done in part so we would be looking the other direction. That's the thing about deception. When it works, it deceives. A successful deception is only revealed after the fact, in hindsight, when everybody has already shown their hand. Or, perhaps, not even then. Now that the deception has been revealed, in the future, we won't take Hamas for granted. We will pursue their disarmament, and we won't let them become the monster they were. But what scares me now is not Gaza. It's not Hamas. We will expect what they will do. What keeps me up at night are those we are not thinking about. Those people, those groups, those nations who we are currently dismissing, who are flying under the radar, who are in the process of carrying out their own deception. The major surprises in histories have always come precisely from those who have been dismissed. But this hard fact doesn't stem entirely from a flawed reasoning. To have any chance of functioning in a complex world, people, institutions, and even intelligence agencies must make constant, brutal choices. They must decide what is relevant, what is imminent, what is noise that can be ignored. This is a form of strategic triage. It is a simple reality that the vast majority of potential threats must be discounted. We must place bets on which enemy poses the most threat, which enemy might attack, and even which enemy is even an enemy. When you are allocating scarce resources, you have to focus your energy to where you think the threat will come from. You can't simply say you will take every threat seriously. This problem of having dismissed the wrong enemy is not new. And for Israel, this is the second time it has made that mistake. So is that it? Are we defenseless? How do you plan a national defense? How do you plan your intelligence agency? How do you expect the unexpected? First of all, we have to craft a system that will give us a chance to not fall into tunnel vision. I think there must be a sort of intelligence red team of a sizable proportion. Yes, I know we are resource constrained, but precisely because of that, we cannot put our entire resources on what we know. Perhaps 10, 20% of the intelligence apparatus needs to be looking far and wide, trying to find unknown threats. And also to re-examine the work already done on the areas of perceived threats, looking for flaws, poking holes in the current way of thinking. This must be constant. Of course, this too will not be 100%, but at least it will give us a chance to find out the threats we are not currently thinking about. But we have to do this from the understanding that it will be impossible to see every threat. There will always be threats that we simply do not see. My second proposal is that we cannot base our defense on the presumption of perfection. That is unattainable. The ultimate necessity must be national resilience. The resilience of the army, the resilience of the intelligence agencies, the resilience of the national psyche itself. We must spend a good portion of our scarce resources towards resilience. In the previous video, I went over some ways that can be achieved in the army. We must always expect failure and plan accordingly. But in addition, the army and our national defense needs to be first and foremost threat agnostic. We need to prepare for different types of attacks, but we shouldn't hone our entire defense on this enemy or that. Just as you do not design a boat to withstand one particular wave, but rather you design it to take on the ocean, so must be the defense doctrine of Israel. Not structured against one particular enemy, but built to withstand any who might stand before us. It is not enough simply to say that we must expect the unexpected. You need to have the systems in place capable of dealing with the unexpected. And that needs to take priority over that which is expected. We must take for granted that we are going to be blind to the true dangers that lie ahead. And this is why we must learn how to fight in the dark. This wraps up the first series in the anthology. This was the prelude to October 7th. Going forward, I'll be looking at perhaps happier topics. The next series will look at the transition from peace to war, the shock, the mobilization, and what it means to have a country turned upside down, and what it means to reforge it in the fires of war. Until next time, like, subscribe, and share with friends and family. Take care.